how would you convert me to, being not into feminism, to no longer being a feminist? Like,
to sell you on my worldview.
Yes, like how would you sell me?
I will answer to this.
Okay.
Even though what you're asking me is the hardest thing in the world to do, I'll still try. But I want the concession and promise from you that after I'm done making my attempt, you're going to make yours. And how would you convert me to your worldview? Is that a deal?
Absolutely.
Got to go right in the mic. Otherwise, I can't hear you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So here would be my pitch. My pitch would be that the society that you have created for us is and people hate it. They hate it. And that's why you got Donald Trump. You got Donald Trump because people hate the society that you feminists have made for them. And here's why they hate it. Because all the things that you consider to be freedom aren't freedoms at all. They're just taking away people's freedoms under the guise of freedom. For instance, if I asked you about control, I'm guessing that you would want control, right? Stricter control?
Mildly stricter, in the sense that I think people with like significant mental health issues documented should probably not be allowed to have guns.
Curtailing control, okay? Curtailing freedom on the Second Amendment. On the First Amendment, during 2019, did you think that the government, it was appropriate for them to go in and remove what they considered misinformation for the good of the public? Yeah.
I don't have a solid opinion on that one.
Well, earlier you did, and it seemed like
you said removing misinformation, like going through and
yeah, they worked with tech companies to remove what they considered misinformation.
Well, that's not what we talked about earlier.
That's what they did.
It's different.
I know, it's not different.
It's different than, we were talking about shutdowns, were we not?
Yeah, but the part of the lockdowns was that they were depersoning people because of what they considered to be misinformation, and the government was working with the technocracy in order to do that for the good of all people. And it's like, I guarantee you at the time, if I go back and look at whatever content you were making, if you were making content at that time, I don't know. But I can promise that whatever social media you had, you were probably very much in the we need to get rid of misinformation camp. Because all of you guys were. And so it's like under the First Amendment, it seems like, the feminist and the progressive movement, which is basically a part of the feminist movement, does what it can do to curtail freedom there too. And it doesn't seem like you really want there to be much personal freedom, even if people say, look, I just want to live among a people group that I'm familiar with and I have a preference for and an attraction to. You're like, no, that's unacceptable. And you're a bad person for even wanting to do that. And there should be legislation that stops that. And there should be legislation which stops you from having your preferences for who you hire and fire and things like that. It's just, I guess my biggest pitch to you would just be this. Like, it's really funny for me that the Christian nationalists get this rep that we're like fascist, dictatorial crazies who want to take away freedoms. And yet, every single time I talk to one of you feminists or I talk to one of you progressives, and it's basically synonymous at this point. I mean, there's no progressives really who aren't feminists, and there's no feminists really who aren't progressive. It just seems to me like the totalitarian nature of everything that I've seen has come from you guys. Like the C-19 lockdowns, the COVID passports, the where are your papers, that was you guys. The remove all of the information because the government doesn't like it from private websites and put pressure on them to do it, that was you guys. The whole idea of you need to wear your state-sponsored piece of clothing, the mask, that came from you guys. It's like all of the fascist dystopian things that I can imagine that Orwell was warning about and things like that, that doesn't come from us. That always seems to come from you guys. The people who are the fascist hunters seem to be the very worst at real freedom.
Here by any chance?
Well, hang on. Let me finish my pitch.
Okay.
Before you ask me questions about it, right? So, if you wanted me to give you the most convincing argument that I possibly can, it would just be this: that everything we talk about is actually you curtailing freedom, not me. And everything that we end up ultimately discussing seems to come down to the fact that you just want to kind of engage in degenerate behaviors. And that's the only freedom you seem to care about, the freedom to promiscuously have sex and then have an to take care of that if you need to, even if it's the case that by removing that, there would be less unwanted babies born. You still think that we need to have that because, people just need to be able to if they want to and be promiscuous if they want and have STDs if they want. It's like, It always seems like the freedom that you guys advocate for is only a freedom towards degeneracy and never actually about freedoms that are really intrinsic to the human experience. And kind of even more than that, I would just point this last thing out, which is, you know, if you had a society where it was really full of more people like me, right? It was full of people who did take their religion seriously, and they took their family dynamics seriously, and they took the things that they were doing seriously in regards to morality and ethics and how to treat people, and not sacrificing the whole for the small percentage of, you know, LGBTQ people and this and that. How would the world really be a worse place? Objectively, how would the world that you live in really be worse? I just don't think that I've ever heard a compelling argument for how it would. And so I think that I would try to make for you, instead of logical appeals, I would just make a purely emotional appeal that, like, the world for you would actually be a much better place if there was more Christian nationalists like me and less Charlies with your worldview.
Well, I wouldn't be able to go to school if that was, you know, people's
women. Listen,
because again, it was indeed feminism that, you know.
Yeah, I've heard this argument a lot, but can I just point something out?
Sure.
That with this idea that women could be educated, right? And they, by the way, they basically always were able to. They flew around with elites all over the place, especially early feminists, and they went abroad to study and things like this. But what that became was women should get educated. And what that became was a lot of student debt and a massive racket. And college is not about rewarding the best and the brightest, or not everybody could go. Okay? It's really right now, the degree that you have, an 8th grader 50 years ago knows more than you know. Okay? About history, about math, about social sciences. An 8th grader 60 years ago knows more than you do right now. And
Is
it's
that really
like,
what you think?
Yeah. Not only do I think it, I think that if I gave you a test that an 8th grader would have 60 years ago, you would fail it with your college degree. And the reason for that is because you didn't get any education at school. You got a lot of student debt at school. Yeah, that's what you ended up with, because it's become a giant racket. And if it was really about the best and the brightest, then not everybody could go. And maybe everyone shouldn't go, because it's really for most of it, the stuff that you learn in high school, right? Why is it that every high school educated person I come across seemingly is just as intelligent as every college person I come across?
That's an interesting perspective. I haven't had a similar experience in my lifetime.
Yeah, well, you have a bias preference, and I don't. Like, you're biased towards elites, right? Elitism.
I do, you know, I grew up in an educated household, but I was also primarily raised by a very conservative father who was also a doctor. So was my grandfather.
And was your conservative father a dummy?
No.
Then why was he conservative?
Because it benefits him personally to be.
So he was just immoral.
For pursuing his own ends, I don't know if I would say that.
You're not sure if your own father was immoral or not? You're not quite sure?
No, I mean, unlike all of us here, my dad is responsible for saving thousands of lives. He's put out a lot of good in this world.
And would your father agree?
He will leave this earth with a clear conscience, no matter what his beliefs are.
Can I ask you this? Would your father, who saved all these thousands of people, agree more with my worldview or yours?
No. I think he would find your worldview strange.
That's not what I asked. I didn't ask if he would find it strange. I asked if he would agree with it more than yours.
I don't know enough about your worldview, I think, to agree or disagree, but I think that he'd be...
How about his political alignment? Would his political alignment line up more with mine or yours?
What is your alignment politically? Like, what do you want the government to
far right wing,
look like?
Yeah, far right wing conservative. Would he be more in line with that?
I think that my dad is he skews libertarian more than anything. And I think
libertarians are definitely going to like that more than your view.
I think your proposal to limit suffrage, I think would
Libertarians love that idea generally.
Limiting access to voting? Limiting people's individual freedoms?
Well, wait
powers?
a second. That's not limiting their freedom. What it's doing is stopping
away the right to vote.
No, it's stopping you from collectivizing and becoming tyrants. And that's what you've done with the vote. You've collectivized and become tyrants, a tyrant of the majority, a tyranny of the majority, a slight majority, and you become tyrants, just like you were during COVID-19. That's not, you didn't free anybody. Who are you freeing with your policies? Like, how are you making our lives better?
The power that the executive branch has now. I mean, like, the executive branch is the strongest it's been in ages. Like, what do you think
No, it's
about
not.
tyrants?
It has less power than it did under Jackson. Significantly
Okay,
less
I
power
said
than it did under
recently.
Jackson.
I
And by
said
the way, can I
recently.
just point this out, right? When you're talking about Donald Trump, he has the same exact powers that the president Joe Biden had before him. The same ones. He doesn't have a single additional power. Not a single one.
What about that the Supreme Court ruled that he cannot be held responsible for specific illegal acts that he committed?
Yeah. Well, look, this was early understanding of case law with the president, is that you're not going to be able to allow states to prosecute the president of the United States, or else a state who was just
that's
upset.
tyranny.
No, it's not.
That's
It's the opposite.
tyranny.
A state that's upset at the president could bring him in for trumped up charges, and he's the federal executive. That would create a constitutional crisis. Literally overnight, it would create a constitutional crisis. We have diplomatic immunity for diplomats. They come in and commit a crime, we can't put them in jail. Even though they committed a crime, we can't put them in jail. They have diplomatic immunity. Our own president doesn't have immunity from state prosecution. Yeah, he kind of has to. Otherwise, California Governor Newsom right now, Newscom, would bring him up on charges of treason if he could, and would try him in California under the state code if he could. He would do that.
Love that. I hope he does.
Okay, well then guess what? If that's the case, then why shouldn't the president have the ability to do that to Gavin Newsom?
He could. If he wanted to, I don't know, start a case against Gavin Newsom.
No, I'm saying, why does the federal authority not give him the purview to do that? For the same reason.
To charge him on a state level?
To charge him at a federal level. He can't just be like, oh, he committed treason and go charge him. You can't have the state charging the executive branch. You can't have them doing that.
I think you can.
No,
I think it
well,
should
not
be
only
so.
can you not, the Supreme Court even ruled you can't.
I think you should be able to. I think that's ridiculous. I think we need to be able to hold our leaders
great.
accountable and
You would
not
end
put
up-
too much power in their hands, because I am against authoritarianism.
Okay, so let's say California does that.
Hell
They
yeah.
say, hey, we're going to go ahead and bring up Donald Trump and he needs to appear in court. How does California enforce that?
In this day and age, I don't know. That gets tricky. I wouldn't trust Donald Trump to
Are they going to
show up.
send California agents to arrest the president of the United States, do you think?
We could send the National Guard and start a civil war.